Well, there's a lot of old mythical stories of people dying and resurrecting and all that kind of stuff. But is Christ at least the first claimed person to have fulfilled that story in actual reality?
I think so. I don't think I've seen another story where it's not just that, because people say he resurrected, but Christians don't just believe he resurrected. We believe that he gathered all of death into himself and brought it up, into the Father. And so it's like I said, there's
Wow.
no other story after that, right? It's like that's it.
No.
Like he basically went into death and then gathered all of it, all of multiplicity, all the way to the constitutive elements, and then brought it up into heaven. And so I don't think that I don't. If anybody has an idea of another story like that besides the story of Christ, I don't. I've never heard it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to know if there is. Because it's really, I find that symbolic story very interesting of, Christ gone down to Hades, defeating death and all that kind of stuff. Because even people all around the world, when they get to really hard situations, and I've heard this of like an old, one of my best friends who lives in Chile, they have crazy earthquakes, and there was a time where he was like a materialist, atheist, socialist, but then when that earthquake came and he thought he was going to die, he went on his knees and prayed for Jesus.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those kind of situations where people, they could be the most anti-Christian person ever, but man, when you're in a crazy situation where you think you're going to die, who else are you going to call? I always found that part interesting, and I think that's kind of what made me curious to at least explore
Yeah.
Christianity, is that special place that Christ has. Because
Yeah.
people don't call for Buddha if they're getting attacked by demons, you know? And it's interesting because people, even, I actually want to talk to you about UFOs, because I found even that to be the case, where certain people have a UFO experience, they'll call out to Christ and then disappear.
Oh, really?
The
Yeah,
thin
I've
air.
never heard that story. I believe it. I'm not surprised. I think
I haven't
definitely.
tested it, but I've
Yeah,
heard that.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems pretty obvious by now that there's at least a relationship between UFOs and kind of these kind of dark principalities, and the relationship between UFOs and also psychedelics seems to be becoming clearer and clearer. Let's say, and it seems like it's also part of the story. Like it's, have you ever seen Aleister Crowley's his demon, like the creature that supposedly dictated several of his books? It's his demon is called Eliath. It just looks
Elias.
like it. Yeah,
Oh,
Elias, so Alioth. And Eliath looks just like a gray, dude. He looks like a gray.
oh,
And
that's
this is like
creepy.
this, yeah, and I think it's the first image of something like that anybody had kind of ever seen.
Huh.
But he had this encounter, and Crowley and the OTO were really hard, like they were trying to break things open, like they were trying to kind of just remove the seals. And I think they probably were successful,
Oof.
and
Breaking the
that's part of the,
seals revelations, eh?
yeah, and part of the chaos of what we're seeing is maybe this kind of this opening that they participated in, and now there's a lot of this stuff kind of flooding through. And so it's interesting that you say that you've read stories of people who pray and then the UFO experience just vanishes. I'm not surprised. Yeah,
Yeah, same with sleep paralysis or bad psychedelic trips,
yeah.
things like this. And again, these are people who you can't even say it's just placebo, it's just bias, because it's a lot of times it's coming from people who, if anything, they're anti-Christian. So it's like, if any, you know what I mean? Like it makes no sense for it to have
But
such
it's
a
just
powerful
funny. Like
influence.
people, imagine that. Imagine what you said, and I, people stop thinking. It's like they say it's just placebo. It's just bias. It's like, okay, well then why don't you call to Spider-Man and see what happens, and see if it's just placebo? It's like that's
Mm.
not how reality works. It's not true. Maybe there's something placebo about it, but placebo is not arbitrary, even if that's part of it. It's like you can't just call it to anything and then it'll work. It's like, no, it has to be something that you believe in. And that's something which is powerful enough to kind of be there in your story, even though you deny it consciously. And
Yeah.
so the idea of just saying it's like, oh, it's arbitrary, it's prejudice, like, okay, dude, you don't understand how these things actually work. It's like, no, they're not. The reason why they would even work, even using the placebo argument is not arbitrary, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Even
Like if
even the word just, like, oh, it's just your brain.
I know that word. I hate that. Every time someone says it's just that, I'm like, okay,
It's just
no.
a projection.
Yeah, I've caught you. It's not possible. Like think of the placebo effect. Think of the placebo effect. If you get a placebo from your doctor,
Right.
Probably work. But if like a homeless guy walks up to you on the street and gives you a pill and says, "This is gonna cure your disease, man," like it's not gonna work.
All right, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna work. And so it's like placebo is not arbitrary. It has a structure, and it has a way to manifest itself, and we can understand it. And it's actually part of reality. It's not something that you can just put to the side and say this is not part of reality. It is, because it works. Like it actually works. So